How is everybody doing? Welcome back to another episode of The Banker Next Door. I am your host, Dr. Joe Berquist. Today, I wanted to talk to everybody about data centers. I found this to be a really interesting topic. I was actually trying to put this episode together as kind of a discussion as a kind of an element of the commercial real estate sector. It basically, how banks might, focus or look at data centers. And this church turned into a much more fascinating topic because I think of all the different elements that come in here. You've got kind of big tech, you got AI, you've got kind of general technology, you've got the commercial real estate aspect of this, you've got nuclear power, you've got all these different things that are kind of playing in and tying into this subject right now. And so there's a number of articles here that I want to show everybody today. The first article I'm going to focus on here is called The Data Center Debate. And I'm going to kind of go into like a little bit of the pros and cons of what's going on with data centers. And then I'm going to follow this up with three articles that we're just going to kind of glance at, go through very quickly, because I just want to point out what is, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon doing, basically signing deals with energy companies to try to, you're in certain cases, like in Microsoft's case, to reopen a nuclear power plant in Pennsylvania and to power these data centers that they're building. So, but in order for me to get to the main, kind of get to the heart of what's going on here, there's a couple of things I need to explain to people. So, the first thing is just the microchips. So, again, I think we've all heard of the company NVIDIA. What you have to understand is that NVIDIA basically makes the best, what's called the AI GPU graphics card, which is used in the majority of the data centers and basically the data centers that they want to build. Now, it's important to understand that these data centers, these are not your mom and pop data centers. These are not, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 square foot data centers with, servers that would store, maybe backup things for local companies in the area. No. These are the granddaddy mega data centers that are basically anywhere from, they could be 500,000 to 1,000,000 square feet with thousands and thousands of servers. And so those thousands of servers need a whole lot of chips, but not just any chip. They need the GPU AI chips that are made by NVIDIA. Thus, you can begin to understand why NVIDIA's stock price has gone manic, why it has just gone absolutely through the roof. Their market value has gone through the roof because part of what's powering that their stock is this demand for these microchips that they make that have to go into power the servers in these data centers. So that's kind of one aspect of this. The other aspect of this is like what's going on with big tech. So big tech is just, they are driven on this race, this basic arms race right now to get to who can build not just AI, but who can basically build the super AI, who can build the singularity. And all you really need to understand about the singularity is this. They want to create what they fashion as the AI God, which in other words, you're going to create this super AI, which will basically in effect run our lives. And then not only will it run our lives, but that AI will then create other AI that will handle tasks, solve problems, do different things for us. And just so everybody doesn't think I'm crazy, here is Ray Kurzweil's book, The Singularity is Nearer. So Ray Kurzweil, this is his brand new book that he just came out. Ray Kurzweil is considered kind of like the godfather of AI, if you will. He originally wrote this book back in, the first version of this was written in 2004. He's now written, this is like a 20-year update to that book. And Ray Kurzweil, he talks all about the singularity and the end vision there for what AI is to bring. And these are not new concepts. It's just that people are just hearing about it for the first time because, quite frankly, unless you're like an uber tech nerd, and you've been reading about and looking at this stuff for the last 25, 30 years, like you don't really, this stuff is kind of new to a lot of people. But for people who've been reading about it or at least listening to it, it's been around for a long time. So you have this arms race right now between all of the big tech companies to see who is going to create this AI first. I'm also doing another episode, which hopefully will be premiering tomorrow, and that's going to be all about OpenAI and Sam Altman, and basically how they're trying to take OpenAI from a nonprofit to a for-profit company, and is that kind of legal? But Sam Altman basically just said a few days ago that he thinks we're about maybe a little over 1,000 days away from this super AI. So this is not some pipe dream anymore. This is something that is coming to be, and the data centers play a key role in this. So just very quickly, I want to explain kind of how AI works. How is AI built at the end of the day? So you have you have a company, they have a massive amount of data, right? But they need to find a way to use that data. So what a lot of companies have been doing over the last 20 years is they've been building neural networks. They've been building out machine learning. And so the data that then goes into the neural networks and the machine learning then get, and this is where data scientists and things come into play, but they then are able to use that data in many different ways to then produce and do many different things with it that actually can be used to make companies money, make them more efficient, create new revenue streams, that kind of thing. And so the AI is simply something that just gets put on top. It's like, you think about like building blocks, it's like Legos, right? And the AI just gets put on top of that machine learning neural network, system that you've developed. And now the AI is kind of like the crown jewel on top of that. And then the AI, so it's like a funnel. Everything has to funnel up, but for the AI to work, for the AI to do its job, you have to feed it an insane amount of data. And that's where these data centers come in. They want to absorb and suck up all the data of everything that is around. And they have to have this massive data in order to create. You cannot create the AI data, you cannot create the singularity without this insane amount of data that they need. And in order to create the same insane amount of data, they got to have these data centers, and they have to have the power with which to power the said data centers. So that's what brings us to today. And I know that was very long-winded. I hope people are still hanging in here with me, but let's take a look at this article now. And so this is called Data Center Debate. Data center projects often carry billion-dollar price tags and were once hotly coveted, but some cities and counties are putting the projects under the microscope and even looking at bans. So the proliferation of data centers across America is helping to power the nation's increasingly digital economy. But for some, it's coming at too high or too unknown of a cost. The data center boom isn't new, but the rate at which these projects are being planned, proposed, and built is quickly escalating. And while data centers were once concentrated in a few key markets, they're now fanning out to metros areas all over the country. Data centers are booming in large part because of how digitally interconnected the world has become. The advancement of generative artificial intelligence also is ramping up data requirements. The Goldman Sachs Group this spring estimated that data center power demand will grow by 160% by 2030, in part because of AI. Data centers are seeking to deploy digital infrastructure at an extraordinary pace to meet what is extraordinary demand across the board. And let's see here, it goes into, and then it kind of talks about how like the growth of data center inventory, how it's really growing up, how most of the data centers are built in Northern Virginia. I can't imagine why Northern Virginia would want to develop these things. There's only things there like, the Pentagon and the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, the federal government. That's so you can understand why Northern Virginia is the hotspot for a lot of this. But here you go. Here's the important thing. But the facilities that support growing data needs typically require significant amounts of resources like power and water. And while data centers usually carry a hefty investment, hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars for one facility isn't uncommon. They typically don't come with a lot of permanent jobs. As demand grows, facilities are also growing larger in square footage, land, and wattage requirements. What's needed to successfully power data centers, combined with the proliferation of the sector, has resulted in a growing number of communities across America fiercely opposing these projects as they're proposed. Policymakers in some places have begun to pass regulations, limits, or outright bans on where data centers can be developed. So let's take a look at data center site or data center shift site selection strategy. Let's see here. So the location strategy of data centers has changed significantly in recent years, driven in large part by where data center users can actually find power. So 6 or 7 years ago, data center developers would look to plant a new facility in one of about 8 markets nationally. Today, it's not uncommon to see data centers being proposed and built in more suburban markets or tertiary places, including rural areas. The scale and scope of data centers also has grown. In 2023, it became more common to see facilities requiring 200 to 400 megawatt of power requirements. And Google set what was at the time a record for data center agreement when it purchased more than 600 megawatts for facilities in Texas. You're seeing this quickly pace and broader geography, but you're also seeing very large buildings. Yes, massive buildings. So here's an interesting chart here for the data center boom. So inventory of the top data center markets in the US measured in megawatts. So no surprise, Northern Virginia by far and away the leader here. But then you have the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you have Chicago. Silicon Valley, interestingly, is actually fourth on the list, which I thought that to be interesting there. Followed very closely by Phoenix, Atlanta. Then you get to like Oregon, New York, the tri-state area, Central Washington, Austin, San Antonio, Southern California, Seattle, Houston, Denver, Minneapolis, and Charlotte, North Carolina to kind of round out the group there. So you can kind of get an idea where a lot of this kind of data center boom is happening. So, some data center users and developers are taking more of a campus approach to their new projects. But these campuses, which can encompass 2 or 20 buildings, also have higher energy requirements. Multi-data center markets have received requests for power that exceed their current grid capacity, according to a report by Cushman and Wakefield. So now as we go down here, so opposition becomes more organized. Not unlike higher density housing or last mile industry facilities, data centers are facing a fair share of backlash from neighborhood and community organizations, environmental groups, and even elected officials. Now, I'm going to have more to say on the environmental piece here in just a couple minutes. And then as we move down here, because I want to get to this there's another chart here. Concerns linger around environmental ratepayer impacts. And then we see here, now this is again another interesting chart. So this is the data center pipeline among major data center markets, square footage under construction and planned. So this is under construction. Again, you can see Northern Virginia kind of leading the way here with 13.3 million square feet of space under construction. Next up is Northern California, followed looks like about Phoenix, and then again Chicago. Austin and San Diego are kind of tied in there. But then look at the planned. I mean, look at that Northern Virginia, almost 59 million square feet. Like, so they have 13 million square feet under construction, and they have another 59 million, which is planned, which is being planned right now. So, I mean, that's an insane amount of development. Most major technology companies have their own sustainability goals and governance, but there remains a lack of regulatory intervention or legislative language that addresses topics like data centers, generative AI, or cryptocurrency. So, and I just want to go to, so that's kind of the end. So while data centers themselves don't generally include a lot of jobs within an actual facility, data center coalitions, Levi, said they do ultimately create hundreds or thousands of construction jobs that can have a long tenure if a developer is creating a multi-billion data center campus. Those are very significant jobs. They establish and grow ecosystems in the markets they locate. They're there to support other sectors, suppliers, service providers, construction firms, heavy equipment, rental companies, hotels, restaurants. That's why you see a lot of policymakers who are very much seeking to attract data center development. That is true, but like they said, after it's built, you don't need a whole lot of employees to kind of run it. But let's take a look. Okay, so we kind of saw this job. We kind of see where what's kind of in the pipeline, what's going on there. But now let's see what's going on with a few of the companies here. So here's some articles from the Wall Street Journal. This first one is 3 Mile Island's nuclear plant to reopen, help power Microsoft's AI centers. The 20-year deal with Constellation Energy would kickstart the site of the nation's worst nuclear accident. So if anybody has not seen, Netflix actually did a great documentary series. I think it was like a 3 or 4 part series on 3 Mile Island. If anybody has not had a chance to check that out, I would highly recommend it. Go watch it. Netflix also did kind of a quasi docudrama thing on the Hiroshima nuclear meltdown, which was actually 12 episodes. Again, I thought it was fantastic. So I highly recommend both those series if you have not seen them. But so 3 Mile Island, as you can see here in the picture here, it had 4 stacks. The 2 on the left here, I believe, these are the ones that were shut down. These were the ones, and this is on a small island called 3 Mile Island. It's right up, right by Harrisburg, PA. You can see it if you're at the Capitol. You can look down the river and literally see 3 Mile Island with the stacks just down the river. If the 2 stacks on the left here are the ones that are non-functional, because those were the ones that were affected by the meltdown in 1980. But then for a lot of people didn't understand that they had 2 other stacks that basically remained in operation up until 2019, until they were basically shut down. So which we'll see here in a second. So a deal between Constellation Energy, who owns 3 Mile Island, and Microsoft will restart Pennsylvania's 3 Mile Island, the site of the country's worst nuclear power accident, to help power the tech giant's growing artificial intelligence ambitions. Under the agreement, Constellation would revive the plant's undamaged reactor, which was too costly to run and closed in 2019, and sell the power to Microsoft. The plan signals the gargantuan amount of power needed for data centers for AI, along with the tech industry's thirst for a carbon-free, round-the-clock electricity source needed to meet climate goals. Constellation expects to spend around $1.6 billion to restart the reactor by early 2028. Microsoft has signed a 20-year power purchase agreement with Constellation. The company said Friday the deal would help Microsoft pair its 24/7 electricity use with a matching source of nearby clean power generation. And I gotta say here that, and let's see here, is just anything else that, kind of coming down here. So, I just want to point out here from my perspective, I have always liked nuclear power. And one of the things that never get, anybody who says they like nuclear power, it's immediately you kind of get shut down in a broader conversation. Oh, that's, nuclear power is old, it's antiquated, it's dirty, it causes all kinds of problems, it's dangerous. Like, oh, you get all the things in that, but there's never an allowance for the fact that we have made great strides in the technology around nuclear power, and that we now have the ability, which we're going to see here in a second in some of these other articles, to basically you could create much smaller plants that look much different than the stacks and the things of old. You can create we're making strides with like nuclear fission, as opposed to using uranium. There's a lot of things that are going on there. And and these nuclear plants have been, we've got hundreds. The United States has like 105 nuclear plants that have been running for the last 30, 40 years and have had no problems. They're getting older. A lot of them need maintenance and things, but the entire kind of environmental debate just basically wants to shut them down. And that leads me to my issue with this here today. So why is it that Constellation Energy, it was this whole thing about, environment and, the cost to run the facility, and we need to make maintenance. I mean, they are spending $1.6 billion to bring it back up to snuff so that Microsoft can use it. But why was this not done for the people of Pennsylvania? And I might add, this power from this nuclear plant may have even gone as far as parts of Ohio, maybe parts of like West Virginia, maybe parts of New York State. Why is it that this couldn't be done for those people to provide them with cheap, strong, efficient, supply of energy, a sustainable energy? But that was totally out of the question. But Microsoft shows up with a check, and all of a sudden it's hey, no problem. We're going to open this bad boy, get it all fixed up, ready to go. We're going to give all this energy right to Microsoft. Like how is that okay? How is that all right? And I just, and it just, this whole thing really irks me. if I was the governor of PA, I would not have allowed this for 1 second. I would have been like, no, I would have gone back to Constellation Energy and been like, sure, you can reopen the power plant, but you're going to reopen it for the people of Pennsylvania. You're going to reopen it for the businesses of Pennsylvania. You're not going to, and hey, if you want to sell some energy to Microsoft, that's fine, but you're not going to reopen this just for the sole purpose of giving all this power to Microsoft just so they can power some AI, so they can power some massive data center. That would have been a non-starter right from day one. But hey, look, politics is what it is. But let's look at some other things here. So, well, let's jump back to, let's go to Google first. So Google backs new nuclear plants to power AI. Startup Keros power plants to build small reactors to help supply electricity to the tech company's data centers in a first of its kind deal in the US. So Google will back the construction of 7 small nuclear power reactors in the US, a first of its kind deal that aims to help free the tech company's growing appetite for electricity to power AI and jumpstart a nuclear revival. And this is, like I said, this is where the new technology comes in, and it's basically like, they have the ability, to build these smaller modular nuclear reactors now that I think are much safer, much cleaner. But this part of the conversation has basically not allowed to have been had. We basically, this like I said, this gets shut down whenever people try to bring it up, especially when you have people that are on the kind of uber environmentalist side of the conversation. They don't want to hear it. But now, I guess it's just okay. I'm happy in the one sense that Google and these guys are bringing this forward, but why was this conversation not had before? Why did it take for the big tech companies to show up, throwing around a bunch of checks to kind of get this thing going? And here's the thing here. The end goal here is 24/7 carbon-free energy. That sounds fantastic. That sounds just like what we want. We feel like in order to meet goals around the clock clean energy, you're going to need to have technologies to complement wind and solar with lithium ion storage. Okay. So again, I think, and then it gets back to a more political discussion of this whole idea of, everybody people on the left are trying to move away from coal and nuclear and gas, and they want to put in, it's all like wind, solar, hydroelectric power. And I think the reality that we're beginning to understand here is that the wind and the solar and the hydroelectric, they're nice complements, but they cannot replace the sustainable, clean, consistent energy that gets supplied by coal and gas and nuclear. You can't place it. And now, if you want this future with all these massive data centers powering all this AI and all this other tech around the country, you're going to need way more energy supply. And I mean, probably 50 or 75% more energy than what we currently produce. So so again, we're going to need this. So I think this is good, because hopefully it will jumpstart this whole conversation around nuclear power and what we can do with nuclear, moving forward. So that's it. So Google, like I said, they're jumping on. They want to build these 7 smaller nuclear reactors to power a bunch of their data centers. And now we get to Amazon. So Amazon joins big tech's foray into nuclear power. Internet giant part of $500 million investment to help bring small modular reactors onto the grid. So Amazon signed deals to back nuclear power projects across the U.S., becoming the latest big tech company to commit to fueling a renaissance of electricity source to power the rapid development of artificial intelligence. On Wednesday, Amazon had agreed to work with Dominion Energy to explore the development of small nuclear modular reactors, or SMRs, in Virginia. That could enable faster and less costly construction by building smaller reactors instead of behemoth bespoke plants that can run years overdue and billions over budget. What they're referring to is the newest nuclear reactor that was built in Georgia that basically took, had massive cost overruns, took forever to build. And that was the first power plant that was built in the United States in 40 years, 45 years, something like that. Um, but what's interesting here is what does Amazon, where they want to do? They want to build these in Virginia. We just saw from the other article the massive amount of planned, almost 60 million square feet of space that's being planned in Virginia, undoubtedly for the government. And forget not, who is Amazon? Amazon Web Services, who is their number one client? The CIA. The CIA is their number one client. They also do a lot of work for the Pentagon, for other government agencies. So it's not really that shocking that Amazon would want to develop these, you would want to work with Dominion to develop these smaller nuclear reactors around Virginia, given their ties to the government and given how the plans that the government has to build out these massive data centers. And they need, like I said, the energy to fuel these things. I think, like I said, this whole conversation is just it's a really fascinating conversation around these data centers. I mean, I think on the whole, on the surface, data centers are fine. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with data centers but it's the size of the data centers that they want to build. I mean, these things are behemoths. These things are massive. And like I said, they require a ton of water. They require a ton of electricity. And we get back to very political conversations of environmental and where is that power coming from and what are the energy sources. And like I said, and I just get frustrated because you have this conversation that, like I said, totally shuts down nuclear power. But all of a sudden the big tech guys show up with, waving a bunch of checks, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, hey man, we'll get that thing. We'll get this right back open. We'll get this fixed and that fixed, lickety split. And we're back in business, baby. And I don't know, that just, like I said, that just does not, that whole thing just does not sit, right with me. I feel like you should be doing things to help out the people and the businesses in your state, in your community, not just to, roll over for big tech just because they show up with a big fat check. So anyway, that's my diatribe for the day. I hope people like I said, I really thought this was a very interesting episode. I know this runs a lot longer than my typical episodes, but there was just a lot to go over and a lot to pack in here to this. And I didn't know, I could have, I guess, broken this down into smaller episodes, but I just figured it was better to try to do it this way. So I'll wrap up now and just say, if you like this episode, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, as that always helps the channel. Please make sure we are on YouTube, Rumble, and all major podcast platforms. Please leave your comments down below, as I always love getting back to everybody. Check out some of the other content on the channel, and I will see everybody again real soon. Thanks.